Hello everyone, welcome to Aircover. Aircover is an international, inspiring and informative webinar series by Global University Systems that brings to you some of the most interesting businesses and business leaders from across the globe. Our topic today is investing in the growth of your career. We're joined by Seema Hira, who is Lead Business Analyst at Asendia UK. Asendia is one of the world's leaders in international e-commerce and mail, delivering packages, parcels and documents to more than 200 destinations across the globe. Seema has over 20 years of business systems analysis experience and delivered programs such as Sainsbury's Click and Collect, M&S Franchise Solutions and Smart Metering, and in-home display for British Gas. In this edition of Aircover, Seema will talk about her endeavours as a business analyst coach, helping many people in junior roles excel towards senior positions. She will also give valuable networking advice and provide tips on the best strategies to use when it comes to job application process. Seema, a very warm welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to speak to our staff and students.
No problem.
And Seema, August places a lot of importance on its company values, and I would like to tease out one of those values and hear what your thoughts are on communication. What does communication mean to Asendia?
Yeah, sure. So I think communication is absolutely key, even in day-to-day life. If we don't talk to each other, there can be confusion, there could be complexities. It's just completely vital. When we're taking minutes, when we're running meetings. It's about making sure that we communicate so we resonate and we understand what people's needs are. In terms of a business analyst, it's absolutely key because we elicit requirements. But interestingly, actually, it's also about giving other people the time to talk. Someone once told me actually a 10-second rule, make sure you give the chance for someone else to talk. So it's not all about just kind of talking to an individual, but it's actually all about listening. So communication in today's kind of career in industries is absolutely vital. We're always up against competitors, whether we're releasing new technology, new processes. It's just making sure we're clear constantly.
I found it very interesting that you said communication is also about listening. I think it's the first time I've ever heard that.
Yeah.
So very important.
Yeah, definitely. Silence sometimes. You're in a room and when there's dead silence, you think actually why is everyone quiet? But actually, communication is all about observing, listening, and then adjusting your communication accordingly for that.
Thank you, Seema. To our viewers, do some questions for Seema in the chat box, and we'll come back to you during the Q&A session. Seema, so let's dive straight in. You're also a business analyst coach, and have helped many junior roles excel into senior business analyst leaders. Can you give us an insight into your career journey and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, sure, definitely. So as you said, I've been in this kind of industry for 20 years. Feels like forever, but absolutely enjoy it. Prior to university, I was always an advocate of having part-time jobs. So I worked in Tesco's as a student, Thomas Cook, foreign exchange, World Duty Free, and I'm a strong advocate that all of these part-time jobs actually assisted me in my career where I am today. So a lot of that was basic kind of learning, work ethics, etc. I went to Kingston University, did a business information technology degree. It was a 4-year degree. And the interesting thing was the third year was a placement year, which was absolutely, I think, my winner. I had the opportunity to work in Marks and Spencer as a placement student, where I worked in the research and development department, and it was all about future technology. What will our shopping trolley look like in 2050? So it was really fun. It was very key. But for me, I think that the key learnings were just simple, basic things. How do you run a meeting? How do you take minutes? How do you conduct a conversation? How do you use Microsoft Word and Excel? So that year was, crucial. Again, like my previous student jobs, my placement year was a great kind of stepping stone to where I am today. I was lucky enough for Marks Spencer to offer me a graduate placement, so I did my year's placement year with them, and they said, actually, when you finish your degree, your final year, we would love to offer you a graduate scheme. So that was great. So I went back to university, did my final year, hoping to get my grades, and luckily I did. And I think I had about 2 weeks break from after university, and I was straight into M&S. So I was a grad 2000, and interesting, there was many graduates, and I had a technology degree, and I went into IT within Marks and Spencer. But actually, there were musicians there. There was people that had done psychology degrees. It was so diverse. It was amazing. So there was about 50 people, different graduates. So it was another year of training,
It's very interesting for students to know, because we've got lots of art students, music students.
Absolutely.
So there's room for everyone.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing. Actually, you don't always have to just stick to that industry. University is all about learning various values. How do you meet deadlines? How do you do team working? How do you network? How do you write documentation? And actually, all those skills are so transferable to in any industry. So yeah, that was interesting alone, just to meet different backgrounds. And I pretty much spent 10 years of my first initial career with Marks & Spencer, and you think 10 years, but actually, as you know, Marks & Spencer is huge. I worked from many, many different departments within IT, M&S franchises, the food network, the home, the home business. And pretty much started my career from a graduate right to being a business analyst. I was doing some systems development work, so the idea was that they gave me kind of different roles, and I was then able to pick my chosen career path. So I did project management as well, for example. And then after 10 years, I think it was pretty much time to move. And once you make that first move, then I moved to Sainsbury's, click and collect, again, really focusing on my business analysis career path. Did kind of a click and collect program there, spent a couple of years there, moved industry, went to Centrica, ran smart metering. And then made quite a little bit of a jump from Centrica into what was called W Direct at the time. It's now obviously Asendia. It was a small company, a startup, completely different. I'd come from corporate backgrounds. It was a bit of a challenge. My first day was about switching Wi-Fi on and off, and I thought, is this my career? But actually, what was key, everything doesn't have to be standard. Not every company, your career can differ in a variety of ways. So you've just got to be open to change. So W Direct was, was a great a learning curve for me. It was just a different kind of placement. So I've been there, and I am still there. So I think I've just done my 10 years there. Wow. Came as a lead business analyst, and actually just recently I've been promoted to a head of business architecture and analysis.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And I developed kind of the business analysis function within that. So not only was I able to use my skill set to do the doing and deliver the analysis, but I was able to build a new team, took on a lot of new graduates to help them kind of build the learning path of a business analyst, and formed kind of best practices and processes.
I think it's also very interesting for students to hear that you kind of brought in lots of graduates to scheme. So very interesting for students to hear. And also, I think a lot of times, a lot of the jobs that we do while we are students gets underestimated. Just like you mentioned, the skills you learn during those times have been vital.
Absolutely.
For your career path.
And it's always the basic, it's sometimes I think when you start a new job, we worry about the bigger things, how am I going to deliver something? But actually, what makes you excel as an individual is a lot of the softer skills. It's about making sure you can have a conversation. You know when to ask the right question or not to, and actually you can ask questions at any time, and that's all part of learning.
Seema, as a successful professional, what advice would you give to students regarding setting career goals and creating a roadmap for their future?
Yeah, that's interesting. I've always put plans and action plans in my career, and I think that's definitely very, very important. It's useful. You're often asked in interviews, what is your your plan, your 5-year plan. Pen and paper, put it down, your pros and cons, what's your strengths and weaknesses, pull together a plan of action, a little bit of a roadmap. But also sometimes look at kind of quick wins. You don't necessarily have to just have your 5-year plan laid out. Put some quick wins in and some strategies, and review that on a regular basis. And also speak to friends, mentors, or people that have been in this position. And I think the other thing is you don't always have to stick to a plan is a plan. It can change, and I think it will evolve as individuals will learn. We can adjust it, and that's a key thing. Is make sure you have something in place, but don't be afraid to change it.
And how important is continuous learning and professional development in shaping a successful career? Like, what strategies or resources would you recommend for students to invest in their own growth?
Yeah, that's key. I mean, I'm still learning all the time, and every time I learn something new, I'm thinking, God, I've done this for 20 years, but I've just learned something new. I think self-reflection is quite good. Actually really evaluating yourself and saying, how did I deliver this task? Did it go well? Did it not go well? And that's investing in, in yourself and making sure you evaluate. Networking, I know we're going to talk about it a little bit later as well, but networking is key. Make sure you kind of talk to like-minded people. And continue, learning. Webinars are great. There's so much out there on the market. And again...
Just like this one, watch this.
Yes, absolutely. There's so much out there. And just listening to others, their journeys and their skills, you might not always feel that you've taken something away immediately, but, weeks later or when you're in that position, you feel actually, oh, I remember someone saying that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in your interest. It could be learning about communication, networking, time management. So you can literally go onto Google, join up any webinars, and industry kind of experts, get in touch with people, for sure.
What are some of the key skills and qualities you believe are essential for students to develop for career success in today's competitive job market?
That's interesting. I mean, there's a wide range of skills out there, and I think what's key in your question is, in today's market, everything's challenging. There's so much out there, and actually people are looking for something different. What makes people unique? I would say, I'll just call out a couple of things. Adaptability is definitely key. Things are changing every day, especially in my industry, technology or e-commerce. We've got so much competition that every day is different, so I have to adapt on a daily basis. What I might be working on a project at the time, actually I might have a competitor and I might have to adjust my project, my deliverables, my time frames. So a lot of employers are looking in kind of people that can adapt to change quickly and easily, and that's quite a key skill. Definitely team working. I would say that comes up in any career, in our day-to-day life as well. We have to learn to work together as a team. No one is better than anyone else. Everyone's equal, and I think it's about helping others through their goals and not just working towards your goals and your own deliverables. And that's quite key. I think leaders in today's kind of industry will say, actually, what's a successful team? It's not necessarily the leader, but it's the team that makes the leader successful. So team working and working together and, making sure we deliver in a teamly way is key. I think, we talked about communication, that's evident, that's definitely an important skill. And time management as well. We have a very busy life and there's lots of things happening. Similar to adaptability, things change, and it's all about making sure we invest time to manage our time on a daily basis. You might be given 5 tasks and it can be overwhelming when you're starting your career. My manager's giving me 5 tasks, what is important? How do I decide what's critical? And it's working through, and sometimes working through the quick wins can be a nice achievement because it gets you to tick things off your list. But time management is key, and there's lots of key skills, but I'll say they're probably some of the core ones that employers do look at these days.
How can students proactively build a strong professional network and leverage it for career opportunities and growth?
Yeah, so proactively, I think there's lots of things you can do. I remember doing a couple of things when I was starting my career, actually, booking in sessions, informal sessions with individuals that interest you. So, for example, I spoke to project managers in different companies and called them up and said, can I have a chat? Can I just talk about your career? So it's about, again, goes back to networking, but speaking to people who share the same interest in yourself and, talk to them. Again, we talked about kind of, linking into various seminars and webinars and do that. Anything around reading materials. So there's lots of podcasts available nowadays, and again, it's investing time in yourself. Wellness is mental well-being is quite key as well, and I think that's also important to help with your career decisions, because if we don't look after our health, if we don't have the right kind of exercise, the right eating habits, I think that can also not go down well. But if we do that, maintain that helps with career development. It helps gives us the energy that we need to go and attend that podcast, to go and attend that webinar. So Yes, I think it's being proactive, talking to, having mentors. I often had various mentors in life, and again, it doesn't have to be someone that has the same career as you, but it's someone who's been through a journey, some sort of journey. It could be an entrepreneur, talking to them and understanding what were their challenges, and just learning from them.
Good question with regards to mentorship, because you addressed it. When students come to you, or when new graduates come to you for mentorship, how do they usually approach you? Do they just come to you and say, "I would like you to be my mentor," or what do they usually do? Like, how do they?
Yeah, I think it's definitely that, and I think what people recognise is actually, some individuals have similar experiences, similar interests, and in the past where either I've line managed employees directly or not.
Yeah.
And people say, actually, can I just sit down, have a coffee on a weekly basis? Can we talk about any projects I'm working on? Can you articulate how you would approach it? And mentorship could be seen in many different ways. It's whether it's just giving guidance on a specific task on hand, or just talking about any kind of issues or
how to resolve them.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just kind of giving the individual guidance.
To our viewers, do send questions for Seema in the chat box. A quick reminder, we're looking forward to them. Seema, in your experience, how can students strike a balance between pursuing their passions and finding practical career opportunities? Like, any insights on aligning personal interests with professional growth?
Yeah, that's interesting. Obviously, we all have various kind of passions and interests. I think it's really identifying your core strengths, and if you've got something that you're absolutely passionate about, but your career might, differ, for example, they could be quite diverse, but you can take many things from your things that you're passionate about into your learning, into your career, put down your strengths and weaknesses, and trial and error. I think people often kind of, say, okay, I'm going to start my job on day one. I think it's what I want because I'm passionate about analysis, or I'm passionate about being a dentist, or whatever that is, but there's so high expectations set on day one, and I think it's all about trial and error. Don't give up. If a particular job isn't meeting your passion, try again. You must have heard that stat that sometimes our new learnings are, after failing 80% of the time. There's many people that have become, CEOs after doing things like McDonald's careers, and so it's following what interests you, but don't stop at day one. Keep trying. You won't know until you try something. If you don't try it, you won't know. So I think that's kind of key.
Okay. So literally perseverance is key element.
Yeah, yes. And if something is kind of, giving you that enjoyment factor, continue it. But if you don't see it on day one, then I think, continue pushing yourself.
And can you share any strategies or tips for students to stand out in the job application process and secure internships or entry-level positions in their desired fields?
Yes, I've seen many CVs and done many interviews in my 20 years of career, and it's actually interesting. I think going back to networking, often that's still a massive hit, because often people will give jobs to people they have worked with previously. But what makes you stand up in a pile of CVs, that's often key. And I think if we talk about the CV, it doesn't need to be pages and pages. I think a lot of people focus on technical skills, but actually I think the way I started off the session is about soft skills. What makes me different? What makes me stand out? We don't need to write lots of words on a CV. I think it's key just to highlight key things like your time management, any different work experiences, any voluntary work that you've done as an individual. I think that's key. So CV, keep it simple. In terms of standing out in, I guess, interviews and things, I think show more examples. Why is it that you're different for someone who's got the same skill set? And obviously education, degrees and everything is absolutely important, but it's also about, as an individual, what employers look at is, how can you work on multiple tasks in a day? How do you work under pressure? What's your team working? What's your communication skills like? And if you bring in your personal life, experiences, anything you've done in family, you might have, helped family members achieve certain programs of work. You might be looking after a family member because of bad health, and all of that shows commitment. So it's about actually talking about sometimes your day-to-day stuff and not just necessarily saying, actually, my technical skill is I can do coding in JavaScript, but actually what else can you do? You know, what else that will make you stand out? Because there's a lot of people that are very highly skilled. Then how do you kind of differentiate between?
And usually also these part-time jobs, what they've done, that adds value to it, isn't it? That's where it comes up.
So when I got the Marks and Spencer job, there was a lot of interest. You know, what did I do in Thomas Cook? What did I do in Tesco's? What was my customer service like? How do I deal with difficult customers? How do I deal with spillages on the floor? You know, it's all about bringing some of the things that perhaps we might not think that are important.
But do play an important role.
Yes, exactly. For
the employer. And Seema, finally, are there any internships, work experience, or job opportunities offered at Asendia? And if so, how can students apply?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, so we call ourselves Tech Group in Asendia in terms of the IT. We've had many apprenticeships students come in for a short period of time, like 6 weeks or in a few months. Or we do run a program, apprenticeship levy, that you might have heard of. We have to go through different companies to do that. So I think we're quite versatile, we're quite flexible. We're definitely always open to introducing any kind of new students into kind of, you know, whether it's an undergraduate or a graduate. But
it's all music to ears to our students.
Yes, very flexible. So, you know, if there is an interest, definitely do get in touch with our HR team. But if you want to do, a full-on apprenticeship, then there are various external companies that you have to go through a program, and they recommend kind of Asendia as well.
Seema, thank you very much.
No problem.
Let's take a look at some of the questions we received in the live chat box. So I think one of the first questions is, what advice would you give on maintaining a good work-life balance? I mean, you've mentioned this a little bit earlier about,
that's very
the mental
interesting.
health. And so could you elaborate on that a little?
Yeah, sure. And that actually often comes in our workplace. You know, things are, we're juggling constant balls. You know, what is it? But mental health and making sure we give ourselves, the right thing. I think it's definitely, in a day, make a list, and your list doesn't have to be long. You know, what's achievable, what's smart. You know, what can I actually deliver that's going to be realistic. Taking breaks is key, especially if you've got an office job like I do. We have regular meetings, but it's making sure we take our breaks, we pause for a moment, look through our list, and give ourselves achievable tasks.
That's something that people forget as well, that breaks are important and vital.
Yes, absolutely,
Just power through, and then
just to give thinking time, and not to have back-to-back meetings, and sometimes in any industry, when things are, when we've got releases, for example, in technology, well, that means if we're doing a deployment, it's fixed and there are deadlines. But actually, even still, a moment just to breathe and just sit back and lean to colleagues or other mentors, and say, actually, I'm doing this. Any other advice?
The next question is, what's something you would tell your past self that would have made your journey to where you are today easier?
Oh God, that's a good question. That is a really good question. What would I tell my past self?
So what would you tell your, let's say, when you started out?
Yeah, I think not to panic, not to worry. When I first started my career, I remember sitting in large workshops with 10 to 15 people in a room, and always really kind of panicking, thinking, I need to ask a question. I need to say something, because all these people sound so professional, and they're standing up and they're talking, but I haven't said anything. But actually, if I was to tell myself, that's not important. Actually, what you do, you're listening, you're observing. And for those people who perhaps have that kind of trait like I do, not necessarily stand up and have those conversations, you stand out in your own way. Silence is key. You're taking things back, and when you do say something, often people around the table will turn out and pay particular attention to you, because you're not necessarily that extrovert. You're a little bit introverted. So I think that I used to panic a lot, used to worry a lot, think I haven't said anything, that person's got so much more clever than me, what can I do? So I think for me, definitely shouldn't have panicked. And I would tell new students not to do that, take your time. You don't have to completely, make this massive impression on day one, take your time, absorb, learn, and you'll stand out naturally.
It's something that I take away from this webinar as well, because I tend to be quite quiet
Yeah.
during meetings, also observing, taking notes,
Yeah.
writing down what needs to be done, and being less of an extrovert. It's out of my comfort zone, let's put it this
Yeah.
way. So I
Yeah.
quietly observe, write things down,
Exactly, yeah.
and get back in touch if I need anything. And I do have this feeling like I need to say something.
Yes.
What do I say?
And there's, both
like,
personality,
yeah.
both traits,
Yeah.
there's no right or wrong,
There's no- yeah.
extroverts are good at what they do,
Yeah.
introverts. But yeah, and that's just don't worry if you haven't said anything in a meeting. And, it's about then reflecting, and then what you do outside of that meeting, what you do a day later, you can go back and connect and say,
Exactly.
these are the notes I made, guys, and that's quite impressive.
Yeah.
But it's important to talk about it as
Yes,
well,
absolutely.
and to sell yourself.
Yeah. Very good point. How important is experiencing a variety of different jobs in order to build a successful career?
Yeah, that's a good one. Obviously, I've mentioned that some of my jobs, I was there for like 10 years. Jumping ship, some people, work, for a year or two and say, I've delivered what I want to deliver.
Yeah.
I want to move on. I think it's important to have change. I think that's a key thing. I think if you find you're doing the same thing day in, day out, I think you need to really question, what else can I do? Because it's all about you making a difference. And when an individual is able to make a difference, it makes us feel good.
Yeah.
I've delivered this program. It's now we've saved X amount of money, or it's assisted people's ways of working. It makes you feel good.
Yeah.
And I think if you start losing that feel good factor, I think it's about then really reflecting on yourself and then actually saying, I need to make a change. And there doesn't need to be a change by jumping companies.
Yeah.
Talk to your employer and say, actually, is there something that I can do differently? And more often than not, the management will find that quite interesting, because you've stood up, you've taken the initiative, and you said, I want to make a change. So I think in summary, I'll say it's key.
Yeah.
It's, I think just self-reflect. But also what I'm not saying is that you need to move every 6 months or a year.
Yeah.
Employers also like to look for stability.
Of course.
So stability is key, but just make a balance. If you feel you've delivered and you've got you can offer your skill set to somebody else,
Yeah.
then definitely
Go for it.
go for it.
How do you overcome feelings of self-doubt when dealing with rejections from job applications?
Yeah, that can be difficult. And often actually a lot of companies don't necessarily give you any feedback.
Yeah.
They don't tell you, whether your CV is successful or not. I think you've just got to keep going, and don't kind of really get down about it, because it's not necessarily you as an individual. Sometimes employer might have filled it internally.
Yeah.
They may have had a change in their kind of organisation. And I think you just got to keep going, and
And not take it personally.
No,
basically.
and it will happen. I'm afraid, it
Yes.
does happen.
Yeah.
And I think it's just to adjust things. If you feel like you've applied a few times and the CV or your covering letter isn't necessarily giving you the first set of interview, adjust it.
Yeah.
Practice or share your CV with other people that are in the industry who've managed to, are in a career.
Yes.
And get some feedback, but definitely don't take it personally.
Yeah.
It's just the nature of how things work in this in different various industries.
We have another one. Is there high demand for entry-level roles at Asendia?
Sorry, say that again.
Is there high demand for entry-level roles at Asendia?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we love bringing in new starters in who have, students who are into their career. I mean, me personally, most of my team, if not more, started coming from a graduate, because I love, assisting people in their growth and giving them the time. And actually, a lot of the new people are eager to learn.
Yeah.
And it's great to assist. So yes, there's been, and not just in technology, in all our departments, whether it's legal, whether it's in operations, sales, marketing. Yes, we're open to taking on new starters.
And the final question that we have is, what are some of the main benefits of working at Asendia?
Main benefits, that's a good one. So, I mean, I've obviously been there for 10 years. One of my biggest main benefit was, the fact I was able to shape the company to where it is. It was a startup. It's now, a fairly large company. We've got 1,500 employees around the world. So it's a big industry. The main benefits, it's change. I think for me, it's working on something different. Although, you think actually the industry itself is e-commerce, about parcel delivery, it's about network. What's different about it? But actually it is.
Yeah.
We bring on new customers on a daily basis. You know, home shopping is changing.
Yes.
You know, people's needs are changing. People's demands. Yeah. It's not necessarily just about getting tracking events. Or having a parcel delivery. Yeah. It's about offering new innovations. So. Because it's so competitive, for me, the biggest benefit is I'm still learning constantly every day. Yeah. So the amount of change we have, I'd say.
It's changing every day. Seema, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you. Thank you for sharing expertise and insights.
No problem.
With us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And to our viewers, thank you for joining us today. We hope you have enjoyed this webinar. And our next webinar will be in July with Dr. Ekaterina. For more information, do take a look at, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you'll find out more. Thank you again for joining us, and goodbye.